for us all. One of the unsung aspects of this great help has been their financial assistance to some developing countries to enable them to bring reasonably sized delegations here to Vancouver. This is especially appreciated, and Papua New Guinea so benefited. So after we catch up in our sleep, after we return home, we hope to get very busy and turn on with the good work and with the new ideas that we've learnt from here. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea and call on the distinguished representative of Costa Rica.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President, for reasons beyond our control, we were not present when the Declaration of Principles was put to a vote. If the rules of procedure will permit, we would like to register our abstention in the vote rather than our absence, since we were present throughout the day in these meetings. We wish to abstain because of the contents of paragraph 4 of the General Principles. We feel that the document in general is very valuable, and we sincerely regret that we cannot vote in favor of it. But we have already expressed our misgivings on the appropriateness of involving serious world problems which require broader discussion in habitat documents. These habitat documents endeavor toward the achievement of other objectives for the benefit of mankind. And we certainly support those objectives. That's why we feel that problems of this nature should not be involved in this document. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Costa Rica, and his remarks will be noted in the report of the conference. We have now heard all representatives who have requested the floor to explain their votes. The two observer groups, the African National Congress and the Palestine Liberation Organization, have requested to make very short statements at this time. I now give the floor to the representative of the I correct myself. I thought I had heard from all member states. The representative, I give the floor first to the distinguished representative of Iraq.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. سيد الرئيس، إن العراق سعيد جدا بالتصويت على
I ask indulgence.
it's on now. It's on now. Mr. President, the delegation of Iraq is very happy to vote for the Declaration of Principles adopted by this conference, and it had tried consistently in order to reach a general consensus on all aspects, and most particularly on the document containing the Declaration of Principles. It has tried so through the 77 group, and it worked side by side with the Arab delegates, and the group of 77 was quite understanding with its negotiations with the West Europe group. Iraq puts the responsibility on those few countries which try to impose their point of view on this conference and voted against the Declaration of Principles, and it holds them responsible for being unable to reach the general consensus on this document. I refer most particularly to the Zionist entity, which is assisted by billions of dollars by some countries. These billions of dollars are used in
لممثل هذا
driving the people of the Palestine people out of their homes, declaring to the representative of this entity that all the Zionist and all the imperialist actions in Africa and in the Near East are all crimes, and some of which has been recorded in history, while some of which are still standing in front of us, as it is the case in Palestine and in Southern Africa, Rhodesia, and in other places. Humanity has the duty of removing all these racist entities from the world so as to live in peace and security. Those who feel proud of being Zionists and racists have to bear the responsibility of more than 1 million Palestine refugees and many others who are put in prisons. Some countries said during the deliberations that certain amendments and observations were political in nature and that they do not come under the jurisdiction of this conference. However, these countries, after saying so, return to speak on political issues which are not the responsibility of this conference. In all what we said and in all our amendments to the draft resolutions, all bear on the work of this conference, and we have not tried to deviate from the subjects of the conference. We believe that the international community has to condemn in all international forums the actions of racist entities so as to prevent these entities from expansion and from making wars. The international community has experienced that the racist entity does not respect all international resolutions and does not expect from this entity a positive attitude towards humanity. Whether this entity takes this position or not, the international community will knows its stand. Mr. President, the peoples of the world as a whole and the people of Canada in particular know the racist entity which was trying to disguise itself behind Zionism for a long time. The cause of our Palestine people becomes stronger and stronger day after day in all the actions and in all the hearts of countries, of all the nations, and the right will no doubt come to a victorious end. And thank you.
Distinguished record,
أشكر ممثل العراق. وقد تجاوزنا الوقت وكنت أود أن أعطي الكلمة للملاحظين، ولكن لا بد لنا أن ننظر في النقطة الثانية أي المصادقة على الجزء الأخير من تقرير المؤتمر، وأطلب من مقرر المؤتمر أن يقدم لنا الوثيقة 70-1. شكرا يا سيد الرئيس. سيد الرئيس، سيد الرئيس.
Plenary sessions of this conference. This is a short document, and as I have mentioned at the occasion of the morning session, it will be still followed by further reports. They will be, of course, incorporated only into the general report. The report, they will cover the sessions of today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the Rapporteur General. I take it that the conference adopts the section of the report relating to the action taken in plenary on the report of the third committee. If there is no objection, it is so decided. Sorry? That's it. May I now take it that the conference wishes to adopt the report as a whole, subject to any editorial changes that the Rapporteur General considers is necessary to make. I assume that the conference will follow the practice used in previous conferences in entrusting the Rapporteur General and the Secretariat with filling in those sections of the report that cover our proceedings today and with preparing the final report, which will be presented to the Economic and Social Council of the General Assembly. If there is no comment, it is so decided. I take this opportunity to thank and congratulate the Rapporteur General for the excellent work he has done. And I now give the floor to the Rapporteur General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, distinguished delegate. I intended to take a little more of our time, but it is not possible anymore at this time of the day. Therefore, only two statements or two sentences. First one, I feel that this is my duty and my pleasure to express my sincere thanks to all the friends from the Secretariat, and especially to my colleague and friend, Robert James, whose able assistance made possible for me, who does not have even the command of the English language of such a kind as, for instance, Joseph Conrad had some times ago, nevertheless to satisfy this plenary meeting with the work which by two of us and the Secretariat was done. And secondly, Mr. President, I would like to stress only at the end of this our meeting that I feel personally that the duty of the rapporteur are not concluded today at night, and that all of us who attended this conference, this sometimes difficult, but always exciting, and I deeply believe generally optimistic conference, that all of us will take over the duties of rapporteurs to inform the world community on every occasion and at every place on our common program, our common goals and challenges. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished Rapporteur General. We have, I'd better make sure. We have now completed the agenda of the conference. And I now give the floor to Mr. Ignacio Valle of Mexico at this time.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Since we arrived in this beautiful city of Vancouver, we have been given the generous hospitality and excellent attentions of the Governor General of Canada, the Prime Minister, and your own kind hospitality, Mr. President. Moreover, we have noted during the past months the patience and the enthusiasm with which the Secretary General of this conference fulfilled his tasks. This has been reflected in the excellent and timely support of the Secretariat throughout all our own work. As other distinguished delegates have stated, I feel that this conference has been a success. A complete success, not for a majority nor for a minority, but rather for all countries represented here. Because all countries have once more noted that we have much more uniting us than separating us, and because we have also noted once more that we have the channels of dialogue to resolve our differences. Let us pledge that this dialogue will never be broken. As difficult as circumstances may be, as many barriers as may be placed in the path of our communication, there is always dialogue in favor of the United Nations and its supreme mission, because it continues to be the best tool for the building of a genuine and lasting peace. Long live the United Nations. This must be our vital objective and one of the basic lessons that we learn from this type of conference, despite the difficult situations that we have to face. Because of inevitable differences on different items, the conference has contributed to clarifying contemporary imbalances. Even in areas that are apparently most closed to understanding, because in these obscure areas we see a phase of reality that we cannot neglect, to the extent that throughout our work the causes of the problems of human settlements have become clearer, to the extent that for this very reason we have illuminated part of the path toward understanding among peoples. We can affirm that the conference has had the desired outcome. Today, we know more. We have more tools to work for our peoples, and to that extent, we can contribute to having justice prevail in the world. For all of these reasons, our work in this conference has been fruitful. thanks to the generous hospitality of the people of Canada and its leaders, who deserve our deepest and most heartfelt thanks. For all these reasons, the distinguished delegates present here have requested that I propose to the plenary the adoption by acclamation of the following expression of appreciation, recognizing the importance of the international activities of the United Nations system, which are geared toward improving the quality of life in human settlements with an integral approach, convinced that Habitat, the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements, which was held in Vancouver from the 31st of May to the 11th of June, 1976, represents a significant contribution to the efforts of the international community to find appropriate means to ensure the improvement of the living conditions in human settlements, expresses its profound appreciation to the government and people of Canada, of the province of British Columbia, and very especially the city of Vancouver, for having made possible the holding of this conference by offering their generous hospitality and by contributing to the successful completion of its work. Expresses, moreover, its deep gratitude and congratulations to the President of the Conference for the diligence, goodwill, prudence, and proven capacity with which he directed the work of this conference. Thank you very much.
I presume as the draft resolution has no financial implications that it can be considered accepted. And I very much thank Mr. Ignacio Valle for his moving of that resolution, which appears to have been accepted with a reasonable majority. I would now like to recognize the distinguished representative of Canada.
Mr. President, may I seek the indulgence of yourself and distinguished delegates to reply to the gracious speech and motion of the distinguished delegate from Mexico. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Governor General of Canada and the Prime Minister of Canada welcomed all distinguished delegates to this conference. And may I, on this closing occasion, on behalf of Canada, our delegation, which has been made up of federal, provincial, and municipal, and non-governmental organizations, and may I, on behalf of the governments of our provinces and cities and the people of Canada say how very much we have been honored and pleased to host the Habitat Conference and to have all members, all distinguished delegates, and their supporting staff with us for the period of this conference. There have been, in this dialogue, this immense dialogue, there have been differences and very major agreements. It must be the hope of all of us that those issues that divide may in time be resolved by this organization, the United Nations. But what unites us, and where we have agreement, is the adoption by this conference, in its committees and in its plenaries, either by consensus or substantial vote, a very considerable and important body of work and statement of policy and principles. And it's our hope that Habitat and this conference will be remembered as the event which placed world emphasis on the urgent need for improving the quality, the dignity of human life and of human settlements. For Canada and for all of us, the recommendations and the proposals which have been adopted by this conference provide, in my delegation's view, and I'm sure that's shared by all of us, a framework for action which will be a major challenge to our ingenuity and to our understanding, not only by our governments, but also by the international community, but more particularly by the people of the world. And we will all have to reassess, as a result of our recommendations and agreements, reassess our responsibilities, our commitments to the human settlement priorities of each of our countries. And for providing us with this challenge and this opportunity, I would like to thank each one of you for contributing your ideas, your thoughts, and your opinions, both through the debate in the sessions of the conference and also through the audiovisual presentations. Finally, I would like, Mr. President, to thank all delegations which, through their representatives, and formally here this evening through the distinguished delegate from Mexico, have expressed their appreciation to Canada for the host arrangements. May I take it upon myself to, and through me, to pass those thanks on to the City of Vancouver and to the Province of British Columbia, and also to the many, many people of this city and this country who have worked for a very long time to see that the host arrangements were, I think, as satisfactory as they were. May I say for my government that I am very grateful to them as ordinary citizens of this city for the very immense work that they did to provide you with the hospitality they have. It has been our privilege to welcome you all, and we hope that the outcome of our joint visit, our joint dialogue, our joint voyage of exploration will have an immense and long-term benefit to the world that we all serve. This must be a beginning, and it will be a beginning.
I thank the distinguished delegate and my distinguished colleague, the Minister of Justice of Canada, for speaking on behalf of our country. I understand that the distinguished delegate from Liberia wished the floor.
Mr. President, on behalf of the African group, whose chairman I am for the month of June, we wish to identify ourselves fully with the kind expression and resolution just presented by the distinguished delegate of Mexico. I hardly believe a speech is necessary after that resolution, but one has to be made on behalf of the African group nevertheless. We wish to first of all thank the Secretary General, Mr. Henrik Penelosa, and all others whose vision and concern for a better world and tomorrow has brought us all here in the largest assembly ever held under the auspices of the United Nations. I'm sure you will agree with me, fellow delegates, that our troubled world today needs more men of vision of his caliber. God has given to mankind all the necessary means and resources to make our world a better place. The genius of man is not lacking in imagination and vision to do the things he wants to do. Indeed, it is given to him to devise any formula to make a paradise on earth or anything else unlike it. The African governments have demonstrated their concern for human habitat by the large number of delegates they have sent to this conference and their active participation in it. We intend to maintain this momentum in the post-habitat years ahead. Vancouver has awakened in all of us a higher and nobler sense of purpose for a divine mission, so to speak, to remove the ugliness in human settlements all around us, to restore beauty on this earth for everyone to enjoy and not for the few only. We thank you, Mr. President, for the patience, understanding, and guidance you have displayed in piloting the good ship habitat safely to port. Finally, to the Canadian people and government, and especially those Canadians who served with the conference secretariat so successfully, we say thanks for your hospitality and the warmth of that hospitality, which more than made up for the bad weather at times. We will never forget Vancouver. Thank you, merci beaucoup, goodbye, au revoir.
I thank the distinguished representative of Liberia, who from this vantage point is difficult to see, but I do have a television monitor, and I've been enjoying her presence and her remarks throughout the conference. I now give the floor to Mr. Nazmi Akkiman of Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Asian group, for which we have the honor to speak during the month of June, I wish to thank you, sir, and through you, our Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Peñalosa, our Secretary of the Conference, Mr. Kudar, our distinguished Rapporteur General, Mr. Jabrowski, and all those involved in our deliberations, including the interpreters and précis writers, for their relentless efforts for making our conference a success. Had it not been for your sincere endeavors and your wise guidance, we could not have reached the phase we now happily find ourselves at in the field of human settlements. There is no doubt, Mr. President, that it is your indomitable character, your past successful experience and your qualities as a statesman which have steered us through to a further and important step forward in a subject common to all living human beings on our planet. May I also, sir, extend the gratitude of the Asian Group to our hosts, the Government of Canada and the Province of BC, and above all to the peace-loving people of the beautiful city of Vancouver who have opened their hearts to embrace us with zeal. The most conspicuous feature of our conference was, as all have witnessed, Mr. President, the live programs and coverage we could follow. Yet I think that the most lively of them all was the beam of hospitality that we could see in the eyes and hearts of the Canadian people. As our hosts, we wish them long life, prosperity, and happiness, and in the same vein wholeheartedly support the resolution presented by Mexico. Mr. President, we congratulate you and our hosts for making the habitat in us into a second habit with us. Thank you, sir.
I thank the distinguished representative of Turkey. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the German Democratic Republic, Dr. Karl Schmiechen.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Eastern European Group of States, I too would like to support the resolution just put forward by the distinguished representative of Mexico, and to sincerely thank all those who in some manner or other contributed to the preparation and successful outcome of this conference. That applies in particularly to the preparatory committee and the Secretary General of the conference, Mr. Enrique Peñalosa, as well as to the Canadian government and its Habitat Secretariat. Without the diligent efforts and close cooperation of these persons and bodies over several years, it would never have been possible to convene this conference with all its unique facilities. I would also like to support a vote of thanks to all the conference's officers, the conference secretariat, and the auxiliary staff for the very efficient manner in which the conference was chaired and serviced. We should express our particularly appreciation for the excellent guidance we received from the President of the conference, Mr. Barney Denson. Finally, we would like to warmly thank the people and the government of British Columbia, as well as the city of Vancouver, for the great hospitality they have extended to us. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Eastern Asian Group, and I now give the floor to Mr. Levi Farah of Cuba on behalf of the Latin American Group.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, Latin America has been participating throughout the long path leading to Vancouver, and Latin America will continue on the path toward the solution of the serious situations which will have to be faced during the coming years. Mr. President, in trying to interpret the feelings of our own region, we want to associate ourselves with the optimism that this conference should mean for mankind so that its full dignity can be recovered. On behalf of Latin America, we wish to join in the expression of gratitude just rendered a few moments ago to the Government of Canada for having given us this opportunity, which we are sure the international community will benefit from. We also want to express the gratitude of the Latin American Group to you personally, And our congratulations and thanks to the people of Canada, to the Secretariat of the conference, and to all the personnel working in this conference. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cuba speaking on behalf of the Latin American group. And I now call on His Excellency Mr. Jean de Granville of France on behalf of the Western European and other states.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. The group which has entrusted me with the task of expressing appreciation to you is the group of Western Europe and other, which shows how open they are to all ideas. In this tribute which has been paid to you here, Mr. President, I have heard your patience praised, and you are showing your patience once again in listening to us all here, one after the other. We praise your good humor and your tact, and also, if you'll allow me, your courage, which has enabled you to deal with this meeting, which has often been difficult. I would also like to pay tribute to your optimism. I would also like to express appreciation to the Rapporteur General, the Secretary General, and all the members of the Secretariat, who for 2 weeks have worked hard for this conference. Mr. President, we are now going to return to our respective countries with a very vivid memory of Canada and Vancouver. This is not only because that magnificent hospitality was shown to us. Those of us who have had the opportunity of passing through Montreal noted when they visited the construction sites for the Olympic Games, which are to be held next month, we noted that Canada was accustomed to these magnificent efforts which it makes. It is not only the kindness of all the people of Vancouver, which we have appreciated, and also the enthusiasm and the interest which they showed in our work. And this showed how warmly they welcomed us. It is also because it is Canada that played a decisive role in the convening of this conference, and also in the effort made to start off this great adventure of what we now call habitat. We have been struck by and pleased to see that this is a dynamic country which has played this decisive role. Now, as we leave, we hope that Canada will continue this, and we have every confidence that it will continue this work as a guide in this constructive work, which, in spite of all the differences which may have developed here and been seen, is the work of all of us here. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Jean de Granville of France on behalf of the Western European and other states. I now give the floor to our most distinguished Secretary General of the Conference, Mr. Enrique Peñalosa.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, this historical session has now reached its conclusion. The peoples of the world will soon learn of your achievements, and in the coming months, their governments will ponder the wisdom of your recommendations. During these 2 weeks, you have worked a great deal, and you have worked well. Through your efforts, the Habitat Conference has in every way fulfilled the mandate conferred on it by the General Assembly. And, as Secretary General of the conference, I would like to congratulate you and express my gratitude to all of you. On behalf of the United Nations, I would also like to express thanks to the government which extended its hospitality to us for the marvelous facilities which it placed at our disposal for the official meetings as well as for the audiovisual programs, and also to the city of Vancouver for the warm reception given to us. We have a particular debt of gratitude to you, Mr. President, to the distinguished Rapporteur General, and the chairman and members of the bureaus of the different committees. It's also a pleasure for me to thank the hundreds of men and women in the Canadian Habitat Conference as well as in the United Nations who have so efficiently carried out the daily work of this conference. Sometimes, under the pressures of a parliamentary debate, we can lose the complete picture from sight. However, tonight it is possible to give a brief summary of what you have accomplished during these 2 weeks. You have unanimously adopted a series of recommendations for national action, which is revolutionary in scope and which can give rise to surprising changes in the organization of all our national societies. You have unanimously adopted recommendations for international action, which, if they are accepted by the General Assembly, as we believe they will be, will be extremely useful for the development of international cooperation. You have also adopted a Declaration of Principles, which will be not only an inspiration, but also a criterion for measuring human conditions throughout our world. These are the formal accomplishments of this conference. Nonetheless, we should also be aware of the changes that have taken place throughout the preparatory process. As to the growing awareness of world leaders and of world public opinion in connection with human settlements problems and the basic needs of broad sectors of the world population. 2 weeks ago, I stated that the success of this conference would not be evaluated or assessed in Vancouver, but rather in the policies, plans, and programs that will be implemented in the years to come. The future of habitat, the transformation of a concept into material changes in the environment and in the living conditions of all our populations, is today in the hands of your governments, individually as well as collectively. The task is beginning now. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, I want to state that I will continue in my functions and report to the Economic and Social Conference in Geneva in July, and then to the General Assembly in its 31st session. Throughout this time, I shall be available to your governments for consultations on any question or for any assistance that I can offer. May you all have a very happy trip back to your respective countries. Thank you very much.
My dear friends and distinguished fellow delegates, after listening to Enrique Peñalosa, I really think there's little left to say. I have a speech here. Much of it has been said. None of it as eloquently as Enrique could say it. I'm grateful to those who expressed their good wishes and kind words towards me, words that I know my father would like to have heard, and my mother would have actually believed. But we have come through. We're sort of at the midway in a three-stage process in Habitat. The process of preparation over the last 3 years in Stockholm, which has meant intensive work by a great number of people who have brought us to this mid-stage, which determines the political action that is going to be taken, the commitments of national governments for national action, for international cooperation, and the mechanisms that will help this work. But the third phase, I believe as my colleague from Canada said, starts today or tomorrow when we put these into force. And we have a great responsibility to do just that. I'm sure that much will be said about those things which divide us. And maybe we, more than most others, will realize how much has brought us together and how important are those areas of agreement to the future of mankind, to the future of our countries, to the future of the people we represent, but more importantly, to the future of all humanity. I think it's been an interesting conference because in so many ways things have been verbalized that have not been before. It's the first conference I've been to where politicians have used words like love and beauty and passion unashamedly. And it's important that these words do be used and be felt in their very best sense, because that is the only way that we are going to overcome those things which still divide us. That is the only way that we are going to relate to a generation following fast on our heels that are dedicated to love and beauty in its truest sense. I think that we have all benefited much more than we've ever put in to efforts of this type. But when we think of the future and look well ahead, we will be judged by what we have done. And it's a peculiar and I think encouraging part of human nature that we want to live this world a better place than when we found it. And I hope that those little children, be they in those squatter settlements about which I spoke, or in a refugee camp, or those whose parents cry for them because they never survived the ghettos of Adolf's Warsaw. In the future, will they look back and say we did our best and we tried our hardest, and that they could feel that we had passed on to them the same sort of heritage which our parents passed on to us. And certainly we will make our mistakes, but by our efforts today and our commitment to them in the future and the commitments of our governments, we will leave this world a somewhat better place than we found it. And this is not done all alone. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have served as your president. I know it has been difficult at times, but I think we've moved along well. But I'm so grateful to Enrique Peñalosa, to Edar Kedar, to Ducho Turin, to Isabel Bautista, wherever she is, to so many others that have really put in grueling hours, to the receptionists, to the interpreters, to the technicians, and everybody that worked on our behalf and made this so possible. It is them to whom we owe so much thanks at this time, but also thanks to everyone who participated, and thanks to those who follow and are touched by the message of Habitat, by the purest and best parts of the message of the Vancouver Declaration. I thank you very much indeed. Good. I want to thank the Secretary General, not for the gavel that came down so ruthlessly at the early part of the meetings, but for a new one as a remembrance from you, Enrica, and from everyone else. And I now declare Habitat, the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements, closed. It is so decided.